I welcome. We are lagging behind around 10 minutes, but we are going to start the session and try to comply with the schedule. XL Challenge, Employability, Future, New Competences. This is a forum that offers responses about employability and of the tomorrow market, the professions that today we do not know about and that will appear, and those that will disappear. Organized by XL Semanal, together with Fundación Telefónica, Human Age Institute, Inserta, and ONCE Foundation, with the collaboration of Air Europa. It will gather protagonists and experts in human resources, coaches, professionals of the labor market and labor world. This is a cycle that is made up of 5 different conferences. This is going to be the first one, the new employability. Then in December, in February, new professionals about invention and integration. In Salamanca in March, in Malaga the first one, in Barcelona in May, management of people, new organizational models. About this forum, New Employability, this is an encounter that wants to look into the future, to talk about the professions of the future, to look at how technology is changing our way of working and how to prepare for that new scenario in the world of employability. Competences, professionals, talent, new formulae of organization for leadership, and of course for work. These are the reasons that have gathered us here together, and by way of welcome we will listen to Almudena Bermejo, who is in charge of content of the Fundación Telefónica.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Ángel. No soy.
Thank you very much, Ángel. I'm not Ángel Expósito. I'm Almudena Bermejo. I think that you will have spot the differences. Not in my favor. Each one has its own talents. But anyway, welcome to this house, to all those who support this type of initiatives in order to drill deeper into employability and know how the future market is going to look like. It is the second year that we participate as a Telefónica Foundation in this initiative about employability, and where we work, I shouldn't be saying that, but we are very proud of this program that connects, that is called Conecta Empleo, and that researches and works and presents proposals on how that employment of the future is going to look like through the use of technology. That's what we call digital employment. We are very proud of that program, and our intent and ambition is for this 2018 to be able to benefit 1 million youngsters in 12 countries in Spain and Latin America. All those here are very much aware of the need to anticipate what is going to happen in the labor market in the next few years, how this technology is going to affect that future market, what the changes are going to be and what it will look like. And it is that permanent change where we are seeing ourselves immersed in this society, and more specifically what is going to be the new employment and new labor market. That's what we are going to tackle together with XL Semanal and the group that represents it in these conferences that are going to be delivered in different venues in different cities all over Spain: Madrid, Salamanca, Malaga, Coruña, and Barcelona. I would like to wish you that you enjoy very, very much this day that we are going to enjoy, and that Ángel Expósito is going to coordinate, and I hope that you continue supporting us and helping us with these initiatives that are very much needed to know what this society is going to look like in the future and in the next few decades. I hope that we will be able to see it, because we are quite old and I don't know if we will be there, but anyway. Laura Luis de Galarreta, who is the manager of institutional relations of Vocento Group, XL Semanal. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Angela and Almudena. We have ahead of us a brief schedule, but quite tight and quite intense. There will be interesting interventions about future employment and training and the role of media and of XL Semanal, this Sunday magazine that is the most widespread circulation in Spain. So I would like to welcome you to the headquarters of Telefónica Foundation and to this forum that is organized for the second year in a row by the Sunday magazine XL Semanal with the collaboration of Telefónica Foundation, Human Age Institute, and in this year also ONCE Foundation through Inserta. I don't want to take any more time from you, but I would like to thank all those people that have made it possible to be here holding this venue and looking at these new challenges. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you to the organizers and all the representatives of the collaborating companies that have been working for several weeks on this.
Here from Oxford y por supuesto.
And of course our master of ceremonies that wanted to share with us, taking some time from his own chores. I would also like to thank the personnel of the Telefónica Foundation that are hosting this event. Thank you very much on behalf of XL Semanal and all the collaborating and organizing institutions. I would like to wish you a very interesting morning and very fruitful results.
Vamos al lío.
Okay. Carl Benedikt Frey is co-manager of the Oxford Martin program on technology and employment in the Oxford Martin School and business partner of the institution. He is part of the the program for new thinking in Oxford in the Department of Economic History of the University of Lund. His research deals with transition of industrial economies to digital economies. He also deals with future challenges for economic growth, labor market and urban development. His work and his reports on the future of employment, robotics, digitalization and so on are really very enlightening. 47% of employment can be considered at high risk nowadays, since they can be automated in the next 15 or 20 years. 47%. His last reports reveal conclusions such as that the works that require creativity, social intelligence or high complexity levels do not run or would not run risk vis-a-vis the robots. Carl is going to present to us, he's going to deliver his presentation, and then we will open up a Q&A session. We will try to stick to the schedule, and through the next 40 minutes we will try to comply with our agenda. Carl, you have the floor.
Thank you, first of all, for your kind introduction. Thank you for the kind invitation and the opportunity to speak here today, to share with you some of the research we've been doing at the Oxford Martin School, where we try to understand how technology is reshaping the world of work and what that might mean for the future in terms of growth, shared prosperity, and skills development, of course. And I'm going to try to focus in my presentation about what the implications from the transition we're seeing in the labor force associated with, in particular, artificial intelligence and mobile robotics. And I will try to highlight to you what I believe are the things that we should worry and not worry about, because I think there's been a lot of discussion about this, and it's unfortunate, I believe, that most of the discussion is focused on the subject of whether there will be enough jobs to go around. I think there will be more serious problems than that. But this is indeed a discussion that we've had for some time, and it goes back at least to the early days of the Industrial Revolution, but also persisted somewhat or revived from time to time during the 20th century. And the great scientist Frederick Soddyk was one of the people who remarked that civilization is seemingly pursuing two precisely opposite goals at the same time. On Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, it invents new methods of abolishing labor, but on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, it seems to be more focused on inventing new labors to relieve the consequent unemployed. Now, while this might seem like a contradiction in terms, it also is evident from the historical record that we have been extraordinarily productive on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Few in this audience will know anybody who works as a switchboard operator, an elevator operator, a laundress, a lamplighter, and only focusing on the occupations that have actually disappeared hugely understates the transition that has taken place. Imagine taking a farm labourer from 1900 and dropping him into today's farm. He will, for the first time in his life, encounter electricity, milking machines, automobiles, tractors, GPS technology, computers. The job is only still with us on paper. The only thing that hasn't changed is the occupational title. And in fact, I would go as far as to suggesting that nearly all jobs that we had back in 1900 has been automated away or changed so radically by now that they are still only recognizable on paper. Now, while this enormous transition has been going on for quite some time, it seems that, if anything, we've been even more productive on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays. There are more jobs to go around today than ever before. And the prime reason for that has to some extent to do with mechanization, because the entire upsurge in labor force participation in the West relates to women for the first time entering the labor market, which was a combination of social and technological innovations. The mechanization of the household, as quite a few studies have shown, was actually a prime driver in allowing many women to move into the workforce and take in more self-fulfilling paid jobs. At the same time, you can see the male worker has actually, in terms of labor force participation, at least been the loser of the past century. And one reason for that is that physical strength is no longer a great comparative advantage in the labor market. Automation has taken on that job. And as you can see, especially since the age of automation truly began in the 1980s, late 1970s, this trend has accelerated. And if you believe that technology has been the prime force shaping the labor market in the past, there's also good reason to believe that it's going to do so in the future, and many worry that this trend with increased non-employment, particularly among prime-aged men, is likely to continue. There are two things that we do know for sure. One is that computer technologies provide potentially cheaper and cheaper substitutes for human workers. And as you can see, every new computer technology since the 1940s has essentially been cheaper than its predecessor, with the possible exception of the iPad 2, which you can see is a bit of an outlier there. Anyhow, what this means is that capital for labor substitution is becoming not just technically feasible, but also increasingly economically feasible. And if we look at the type of tasks computers are able to perform, we can see that not only have they become cheaper, they've also become much more powerful in the scope of tasks they can potentially substitute for us in. If we go back a century, any distinction between humans and computers was essentially meaningless. Humans were computers. The computer was an occupation or a profession mainly employing women to do repetitive calculations and tabulating the results. This work was taken on by electronic computers in the 1950s, and since then more and more routine work has been automated away. Anything that is essentially rule-based, that you can specify the rules for, is easy to capture in computer code and therefore describe and readily automate. What we're seeing now, though, is for the very first time in history, machines are able to learn themselves by feeding them piles and piles of information and data. They can screen through it faster than any possible human person can, pick up patterns in those data and outperform us in a variety of new tasks. It is the big data driven approach that has allowed algorithms to perform tasks that, like medical diagnostics, better than us. It is the big data approach that allow humans to outperform us in things like document review. It is the big data approach that is now writing even shorter news stories. And it's the big data approach that is behind Google Translate, which is improving upon us day by day. Now, you may think, I've used this Google Translate. I know it's not very good. And when it comes to autonomous driving, right, well, that may be feasible in places like, Singapore or Dubai, but those cars are no longer fit for this, not already fit for the streets of London. And that may well be true, but those technologies are gradually improving, and the question is not whether they're perfect, the question is whether they are better than us. So let me perhaps remind you about the enormous fallibilities we have when we make decisions and in our daily jobs. This is a study of Israeli judges and their decision making during the day. And you can see that early during the day, just after breakfast, we tend to make a quite high share of favorable decision, which rapidly declines during the morning until we had our morning snack, and then all of a sudden we start to make a higher share of favorable decisions again. In other words, our moods are very much driven by levels of insulin. We respond badly to things like lack of sleep. We surely don't work 24/7 a day, and there are a lot of things that we can only deem as being deficits in how we respond to things. So, with this in background, we asked the question together with a group of information engineers at Oxford University, which is, well, if computers are better than us at all of these things, what are we actually still good for? In which domains do human workers still hold the comparative advantage? We came up with 3 prime domains where we are fairly certain that human workers will still hold the comparative advantage in 2 decades from now. And those are complex social interactions, creativity, and the perception and manipulation of irregular objects. If you take complex social interactions, I think the state of automation is best described by the Turing test, where a software, or essentially chatbots, try to convince human judges of them being a person. And some people believe that there was a breakthrough last year when one chatbot managed to convince 30% of human judges of it actually being a person. But it did so by pretending to be a 13-year-old boy speaking English as his second language. And if you think about the variety of much more complex tasks you do in your daily jobs, where you try to persuade people to follow your ways, you negotiate deals, you assist and take care of customers, these are all tasks that are not even near to be automated in the near future. The same is true with creativity, and the reason that we struggle to automate creative work is that we struggle to define what it is ourselves. We don't know the rules for it. In fact, artists constantly break the rules. And well, one can obviously argue that there are programs writing classical music, and there are a few people that seem to enjoy it, and there are drawing machines actually. There are dumb paintings being exhibited at Tate Modern and other places. But in the end of the day, we are the ones deciding in the marketplace of what's creative or not. So for you, computers to outperform us at creativity, they would not just have to be better computers, but also increasingly human. And I think that is a comparative advantage that we will still hold for quite some time, if not indefinitely. The last bottleneck to automation, I think, is maybe slightly less intuitive. It relates to the perception and manipulation of irregular objects. So if I want to pick up this glass and have a sip of water, that's a fairly straightforward thing for most of us to do. But if you want to teach a robot to do it, it's actually not that easy. Because the first thing you need to do is that you need to distinguish the object from the background in order to pick it up. And this is slightly tricky in this case, because the glass is transparent, you can see through it. And the second thing you need to do is that you need to make sure that you apply the right amount of pressure when you pick it up in order not to break it. And you can surely teach one robot to do that specific task over and over again. But if you think about the variety of objects you have in your homes, which you interact with on a daily basis, it's almost inconceivable that we will have a general purpose robot that will be able to clean your home and do every task that entails. Picking up pencils, knives, forks, distinguishing plants that are dirty and need to be distinguishing plants from other buckets that are dirty and need to be clean. These are extraordinarily easy things for us to do. They are exceedingly difficult to automate away. So sadly, I have to say, I believe that the automated maid, the automated cleaner, is one of the last things we are going to see. Now, the key question then obviously is, so how intensive are jobs that correspond to these tasks that are hard to automate? Well, it turns out actually quite a significant share of the workforce are not engaged in jobs that require much creativity, complex social interactions, or the perception and manipulation of irregular objects. Roughly 47% of jobs in the United States and similar shares throughout Europe are susceptible to automation over the forthcoming decades. And the jobs that are exposed are not only the back office jobs or the production jobs. It spans from everything from sales, services, transportation, warehousing, construction, you name it. Nearly every domain is to some extent exposed to automation over the foreseeable future. Now, this does not mean that all of these jobs are going to disappear overnight. This simply shows the feasibility of automating work from a technological capabilities point of view. And as most of you will know, that is only one factor determining whether a job is going to be automated away or not. Relative costs between labor and capital also matter. When Nissan produces cars in Japan, they rely heavily on robots. When they do exactly the same thing in India, they rely heavily on cheap labor. If you think about Google Translate, the type of translation work it could potentially do is limited by the fact that you need certain documents to be certified by a certified translator. So unless we certify Google Translate, it's not going to substitute for the work of translators. And obviously things like cultural preferences matter as well. In Japan, you have robots in elderly care. Where I come from, Sweden, that would be completely unthinkable. There would be a public outcry. But if history does tell us something about the future, it does tell us that when something becomes automatable, it is typically eventually automated away. And the question is, should we be concerned that this might sometime in the near future spell the end of jobs, that we will have widespread unemployment as a result of this? I believe that concern is hugely exaggerated. And the reason I believe so is that we have automated nearly everything we could think of away already historically, and we still have plenty of things to do. And the reason for that is that there are still certain things we can do, and that only humans can do, that we still demand. And if we go back 100 years, we could, with today's technology, automate nearly everything we could do back then. If we had wanted to maintain the living standard of the 1930s, we could have said, well, let's work until April and then take the rest of the year off. But we have apparently decided not to do that. And the reason for that is that we are seemingly greedy. We are very happy to work a few extra hours, to have those hot yoga classes, to travel around the world, to go to restaurants, to do all of these things that we perceive to be nice and necessary. And as a result of that, plenty of new demand has been created. And it's quite an extraordinary fact that as productivity and consumption has grown by 800%, the share that we take out of our newfound wealth in terms of leisure has only grown by 8%. That suggests that we are indeed quite greedy, and from an employment point of view at least, greed is good. So let me turn to what I believe to be the much greater concern, which is that labor is no longer benefiting from technological progress the way that it used to. Even before the days of labor unions, even during the Gilded Age in the United States, compensation grew roughly in tandem with productivity. But as you can see, there's been a great decoupling since the age of computers, which is consistent with the view among most economists that technology is increasingly taking the form of capital that substitutes for workers rather than making us more productive by complementing our skills and making those more valuable. So it has led to a shift in income from labor to owners of capital. And if you look at the changing structure of the labor market, you can see that actually quite a significant fraction of the workforce has outright been made worse off as a result of technological change. Nearly every advanced economy has seen this contraction of middle income worker, and they have either, depending on whether they have a college degree, relocated to better paid jobs, they've managed to reap the benefits from automation, or the ones that don't have the necessary skills have shifted into low skill, low income jobs. They have been net losers to the age of automation. And recent research actually even shows that robots have led to net reductions in employment, not just across confined to particular locations, but also nationally among certain skill groups, again primarily among prime-aged men. So a substantial fraction of the workforce has clearly lost out to automation, and this is not entirely new. The main event in history, most economic historians will argue, was the Industrial Revolution. It was the Industrial Revolution that allowed us to escape the life that Thomas Hobbes referred to as nasty, brutish and short. But during the transition, life got, if anything, nastier, more brutish and even shorter. And the reason for that was that primarily male adults in the artisan shop were displaced by women and children in the factories, working for a fraction of their wages. And why on earth, historians have asked, would people actually have agreed to a system like this? Well, the reason that most people did not agree is, well, the fact is that most people did actually not agree, right? The Industrial Revolution started with the construction of the first factories. It ended not only with the construction of the first railroads, but also with the publication of the Communist Manifesto. Revolutionary technologies bred a lot of revolutionaries along the way. And if you look at the economic trends during that period, these are strikingly similar to today. Median wages were stagnant, the labor share of income was falling, a lot of people lost out to the process of automation. Now, people today do no longer have to share their concerns by, let's say, means of sticks and stones. They can simply go to the ballots. And one fact of modern times is that Donald Trump would not have won the election back in 2016 if it had not been for automation. Had the robot exposure in the United States been 2% lower, where Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin would have swung in favor of Hillary Clinton, leaving her with a majority in the Electoral College. Now, I'm definitely not suggesting that people said to themselves, well, I'm losing my job to automation, so therefore I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. What I am suggesting is that the exit polls clearly show that 85% of Americans thought that Donald Trump was the president for change, and 15% thought that Hillary would be better than Trump in bringing about change. And for people that have lost out to automation for some time, anything is frankly better than the status quo, so they should quite rightly almost went for it, if you like. And because of the political economy of automation, the future of work is exceedingly difficult to predict. 85% of Americans now today favor policies that restrict automation in the workplace. And as a result of that, we're not sort of just at risk of losing a few jobs. We are at risk at losing sort of the economic system that brought us our fortunes since the Industrial Revolution. And this is something that's just going to pick up in pace, right? Robots are confined to a very small group in the labor market that have lost out to it. Once you have trucking being automated away, taxi drivers, all these jobs that exist in every local service economy, location after location is becoming more exposed to automation. And while some people worry about trade, this is the much bigger story. Most people work in non-tradable sectors of the economy that are not exposed to globalization, but they are heavily exposed to automation. And when I worry about this, I worry even more about the developing world. If we look at how we once become rich, it was through industrialization, by shifting workers from low skill, low income agriculture jobs into manufacturing. Manufacturing employment in the West usually peaked around 35%. In China, India and Brazil, it has already peaked below 20%. And the reason for this is that even in those countries, production is becoming increasingly automated. So it's a big question mark whether these countries will actually be able to shift in to a substantial share of the workforce to reach prosperity by simply shifting workers from agriculture to manufacturing. I suspect China may have been one of the last countries that have actually achieved this, and not quite surprisingly, if we look across countries, we find that developing countries are hugely more exposed to automation than the advanced world. And that relates to the fact that it's now mainly the low-skill, low-income jobs that are susceptible to automation going forward. It used to be the case that at least low-skill jobs were the safe havens for workers that lost their jobs in manufacturing. Now it seems that many of those safe havens are disappearing. Meanwhile, we see that new jobs are in fact emerging. Those tend to be highly skilled jobs. If you look at industries that exist today and didn't exist back in 2000, and the people they employ, those workers are much more likely to have a college degree, they're much more likely to have a STEM degree, they earn almost twice the US median wage. But also, those jobs tend to emerge in different places from where old jobs are being automated away, and especially they emerged in places that already have a great abundance of skilled workers. So this is leading to an increasingly geographical divide within countries and across them. And what we need to manage, I believe, more than anything else, is the relocation of the workforce from contracting places to expanding ones. That involves reskilling the workforce and making sure that they have the skills to take on the employment opportunities that are being created in those places, but also make sure providing sufficient housing in those places for people to actually live and work there. And this also means helping the people that don't necessarily have the financial means of moving to actually do so. And with those thoughts, I would like to leave it open for questions and hope there's a minute or two for them. Thank you.
Aproximadamente 10 minutos.
We have 10 to 15 minutes for questions. If you have any questions for Mr. Carl Benedikt, and please identify yourself when you're going to make the question.
Por aquí. Espera.
Hi, sorry. My My name is Jaime. Will a CEO job will ever be replaced?
I don't think so. So I mean, it depends on what you do as a CEO. If you specialize in, if you're a one-man show and you specialize in very routine work, then your job might be automated away. But no, I think most of the jobs that require complex social interactions, assisting customers, negotiating, persuading, managing larger teams. These are very complex social interactions in which where we will still hold a comparative advantage for quite some time. So I believe that that's very unlikely.
Thank you.
¿Más? Recuperamos el tiempo, pero vamos, facilísima.
We're going to catch up time very easily if you don't have questions.
My name is Raul. What can you do from a parent's point of view to educate your children to be ready for this kind of future? What kind of skills we should promote into them as opposed to the traditional school system?
Well, I think one reason I believe that Oxford University is still an attractive place to study is that we have the tutorial system. And what the tutorial system entails is group work with 2 to 3 children, writing essays, discussing them, debating, engaging people to think and discuss and debate. And I think that's the best thing a parent could do as well, to actually get children to read relevant things, to think about them, to debate and discuss, and I think that fosters both creative and social skills, and I believe that is the most simple thing you can do as a parent. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel every time.
¿Alguna más?
Any other questions?
Good morning, and thank you very much for your words. I'm José María Sanz Magallón, General Manager of Fundación Telefónica. Congratulations. I would like if you could elaborate a little bit more on why you think that these creativity works are not going to be replaced by computers, because you already mentioned that now there are symphonies that are composed by computers, articles, even in the creative industries, works like script writers, story editors, more and more artificial intelligence are also replacing at least some of those works, no? So you mentioned that you don't think that computers and artificial intelligence would be able to replace these jobs, but I'm not sure I understood your explanation of that, and it would be very reassuring if you can explain a little bit better why why machines will never be able to do this kind of creative work in decades time, because probably the evolution that we are now seeing, it will continue. So in 5-10 years time, computers will be also hundreds of times more powerful, and with machine learning, etc., they will perhaps be able to be more and more creative in a way, no? Even if I agree that creativity is a human attribute, no? But at least they will be able to look like creative.
So if you go back to 1800 and you say that, okay, before 1800 there were 10 great symphonies. I'm sure there were a lot more, but let's say there were 10, and they happened all to be from Mozart. You can feed the algorithm all the symphonies, all the music being created up until 1800 with the identifier that these are the best symphonies, right? On the basis of that algorithm would never arrive at Stravinsky or Schoenberg or Arvo Pärt. And indeed, it can only draw upon the information that exists and that we give it, right? So it can certainly come with up new combinations, and that may very well be liked by some human beings, but it wouldn't come up with, these sort of path-breaking new paradigms of music that some artists have been able to create. And I think that in the end of the day, algorithms can come up with new things, but that something is new doesn't make it valuable. And I think that things that we tacitly understand may attract other people to our music, for example, is more powerful and more difficult to grasp through data than a lot of people think. So when you have a sort of reasonably closed system, about some type of game, there's sort of finite amount of things you can do in a way, and that we can more easily automate away. But yes, so I think that's hopefully that answers your question.
La última. The last.
Thank you, Carl, for your speech. I'm here. I'm here. Which, in your opinion, of course, are going to be the effects on our society? How do you see our future society, our values, our way to spend our time, or I don't know, how it's going to change our society and our way to think and spend our time?
So I think, first of all, it's important to realize that we have all these debates we have had for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? If you go back to the Industrial Revolution, writers like Peter Gaskell and Kay Shuttleworth worried about the dehumanization of work and people being enslaved to the repetitive motions of machine, and that would hinder their intellectual development and make them less virtuous people. And Marx and Engels took on some of that critique, and in the 1970s you had Harry Braverman who argued essentially the same thing. And so we're always worried about sort of technology changing our value system, and the dehumanization of work, and also the end of work. So I think the worries that we see now are extraordinarily similar to what they were once ago. I think the key task for an economic historian is to find historical parallels that actually fit with today. And at least when it comes to the economic trends, this time is extraordinarily similar to the Industrial Revolution, not just that it displaced a substantial share of the workforce, but also that owners of capital were the prime beneficiaries of technological progress. And I think this sort of growing polarization of society, as you like, has naturally translated into political polarization of society. Trade and technology has become shocks which has reinforced ideologies on both the right and the left to their extremes, and it's led to growing polarization of society. And what happens when society is becoming increasingly polarized is that essentially nothing happens because you can agree on anything, or you end up with a civil war. And I hope that we will find some middle ground eventually, and deal with this problem in a pragmatic way. But I think that is sort of the main challenge, and how we sort of manage the growing polarization of society is also going to be what determines future outcomes.
Just a minute. You were talking about the Industrial Revolution. What do you think about the future of the trade unions and labor forces in general?
So, generally speaking, during the 20th century, the unions, with mixed success, provided a bridge between past and new work. So through collective bargaining, business and the workforce were able to negotiate relocation contracts, which sometimes ensured that there was no downgrading and made the transition more smoothly. In some instances, unions outright blocked progress. But I think that the unions have a potentially important role to play, but it's easier for them to organize around a labor market that has become so much more decentralized. People are not working on the factory floors any longer. A lot of people are self-employed. The gig economy is still small, but it's on the rise. So I don't know. I'm not a consultant. That I'm not here to help unions revive their business model. But historically, they have played a role, and they need to think long and hard about what role they want to play in the future.
Interesante. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We're going to start the debate. Please, Pere, Sara, Jorge, and Este. I will introduce them in a second.
Como queráis. Una sociedad preparada para el cambio.
A society prepared for change. Pere Estupinyà is a biochemist who has focused his work in the TV program Redes. Currently, he is directing in Radio Televisión Española El Cazador de Cerebros, The Brain Hunter. He has also authored several books, such as Comer cerezas con los ojos cerrados. And I would like you to explain what your titles are about. Sara Hammond is director of LinkedIn for Spain and Portugal since 2013. She has focused in the digital transformation in social media and the employment branding strategy, or how to make a company be appealing for its workers and candidates. Jorge Barrero, he is Director General of the Cotec Foundation to promote the innovation as a driver for economic progress. They just presented a report on the Internet of Things and focusing in the business regards in Spain. And also we have Esther Garcia. She is one of the innovators of Under 35. She works in the MIT Technology Review, talking about gadgets that enable the use of tablets and mobile phones to disabled people. My first question for you is, each of you is an introduction in 1 single minute. Please, Sara, could you give us broad overview on the evolution? Carl presented several possibilities. What is your view from your influence area, the evolution of the labor market in the coming 10-15 years? In the last 5 years, I started in LinkedIn in 2013, and since then, in October and November, we published the main skills that the market is demanding. LinkedIn is a professional social media with 10 million users in Spain, so we have a great number of data. We know very well what the demands of the labor market are, what the businesses and international organizations are demanding in terms of type of work and skills, etc. What is really shocking is the way how fast the top skills demanded changes every year. 5 of the skills that were requested last year are no longer in the top 10. And I'm very interested in knowing and learning your view, because the pace of change is not being kept by the education and the training in certain skills. We're talking about geographical and regional skills, not only global. And in particular in certain jobs, what we try to do is to make professionals more productive, and our mission is to create economic opportunities for the international workforce. What concerns us is not only that the robots are chasing our jobs, but who is going to program these robots? Who is going to maintain them? Who is going to write the software programs for these robots? Will it be somebody in India, or will they be located here in Spain? What Carl has shown us in his graphs before is that currently, at this moment, some economies are catching up with us, but in the developed world, the education is the most educated and qualified one. But I see that in the short term, the developing economies might catch up with us because they're focusing in the skills that the labor market is requesting, and they're focusing in them more than us. She has opened several questions now. I would like to have the role of the scientific journalist that I am, and I'm very skeptical in general when it comes to look at all this revolution, the fourth industrial revolution that we are experiencing. And you were asking me about the titles of the books. Eating Cherries with Our Eyes Closed is one of the titles of my books, and it refers to cherry picking, which relates to selecting the data that we need to sustain our hypothesis. And you see that many people are picking some data in order to defend that this is going to be a great transformation, and then you can go to other sectors and realize that the change will not be so dramatic. I like the vision that Carl brought about today, because when we talk about the technology impact, and I think this is right, what somebody said, we tend to underestimate it in the long run and overestimate it in the short run. And if you look a lot at sci-fi movies, it looks like robots are going to take over completely. But when in my daily work, I visit laboratories, and a few months ago I was in the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Lab, and it was a real downer because the robots that they have, and I was talking with one of the top experts in robotics, and he was telling me that people are just overestimating the potential of robots. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. If some people say that it changes us, but I'm not so sure about that. When you talk with Helen Fisher, who's studying love and the way love is changing with the social media and Tinder, etc., and it's not changing, she claims that the change is about the way we meet, but it's not. Our brains are not changing, and the way we fall in love is not changing. And here I wanted to say this to you. This is the hype cycle, which maybe some of you know. When a new technology comes about, there's a peak, there's a technology trigger, and then after that it reaches a peak of inflated expectations. And after that, there's disappointment, and I could go for cherry picking and order my Google glasses, but I wanted to ask something. What you told about cherry picking, but one of the titles of your books is to scratch the area that is not itching. But if when you scratch something that is not itching, it makes it itchy automatically. So this is a book about triggering curiosity. And when people tell me that something doesn't interest them, I always tell them to scratch a bit the surface so that their curiosity starts to itch. And allow me to say something else. From a scientific perspective, if you look at climate change, there are linear relationships, and complex situations do not really work. If we think about the CO2 emissions, and this is going to be a total drama for the world, we realize that the system is complex and self-regulates and self-balances itself. So even though we seem to have a destabilizing factor nowadays, there are other forces in action that might balance it again.
Esther, what I see in my field, within that moderate vision that we are discussing about technology, I think that it is opening up opportunities for a great amount of population to have a powerful tool to be able to integrate themselves into society. When we talk about disabled people, we like to state a figure, but 15% of the people have some kind of disability for daily tasks, daily chores. 1 out of 7 people. In education, it becomes more obvious because 35 or 40 years ago, when integration schools started to come out, we all had some colleagues or some fellow students at the school that had some kind of disability. But then, in the majority of companies, we do not have that amount of people with disabilities working with us, and sometimes it is due to many of the barriers that they are going to encounter in that working or that labor market. It is true that with technology there is a whole upheaval, and we like to see it as a tool and not as an end in itself, and that tool is going to allow us to integrate people with disabilities that perhaps with a computer and with the appropriate means is going to be able to work the same as any other person. Without disabilities, they will have no limitations and they will be able to perform the same job. For us, I think that it is a very positive opportunity, and that's where we see the change of this technological revolution, where we can have quality jobs that integrate us in society, that get us out of that routine and that boring repetitive task. And we hope that that is a revolution that is going to take place, a useful revolution that will allow us to improve in every area. Well, it is interesting because you have calmed down a little bit. I don't know if that is a euphoria or at least a perspective of things. What do you think, Jorge? I agree in the sense that if we think about technologies that we are expecting, they will perhaps take some time to arrive, but there are available technologies right now that can change employment overnight, and they are not changing them because of barriers that are not technological. Technology is never the barrier for change. I think I'm talking about construction, where we still build walls with bricks, where we are able to assemble spacecrafts that reach the moon. We could do the same, for example, for construction, or sectors where perhaps a mailman, the role that he has to play in the 21st century cannot be the same that he had in the 20th century. But there are other barriers, political, cultural. We continue using money, banknotes, which is a dirty and fragile and forgeable technology. We have problems to change our perspective and to stop doing things that we have been doing for so long. And I declare myself fully in favor of automation. I think that automation is precisely what defines or what sets the difference and makes us human. That has always been the case. If you see now someone plugging the earth with their hands, you would be moved, because you know that it is not necessary to do it that way. Now there are many tasks that do not need to be done by humans, and we can stop doing them. But we should perhaps shape that transition in a way that is not perhaps too shocking for us. If we put a rat in a box and we make it push a button for 8 hours a day, even if we do it to develop a new drug, a new medicine, it would be animal ill treatment. But there were people doing that for 8 hours a day in a box, pushing a button, and there were humans doing that a while ago, and it was not so shocking for us. So what differentiates us from machines is exactly what machines can do. I have seen education in all your four explanations. I wouldn't like to restrict this question to Spain, to the 17 different systems that we have in Spain, depending on the region. But consider this question of education training for the future in general lines. Here, with what we know, I ask the same question for you, and we go the other way around. We start with Jorge. Are we approaching training and education well from the infancy to older people, or are there ups and downs? We have been working on this topic for several years. We have performed sociological studies about the opinion of Spaniards about change and automation of employment. We have analyzed specific aspects where there perhaps are niches like big data or Internet of Things. Let's see in the short term whether those are also automatable tasks. But as far as I know, I belong to a generation where our parents used to press us with two things, computers and English. And they were right. Those are precisely the two aspects that have limited me the most in my professional life, not knowing more English or more IT or more computing. But is that going to be what limits my 9-year-old daughter when, for example, the technology simultaneous translation is going to be a standard in 2 or 3 years' time, and English is not a competitive advantage any longer? What can I convey to my daughter? And I would like to say that I agree with our speakers. What distinguishes us from our machines, the generosity, teamwork, the sense of justice and of fairness. We have to train it every day, not just after lunch. And I would add one more, which has to do with a reflection about what is happening in Spain, which is the sense, the feeling of reality, whether we are able to make up a parallel reality, so to speak, when we only have as a tool to reinforce that craziness. Twitter, what will happen when we have the possibility not only to declare independence but also to put our glasses on and consider that it has happened and leave that world? Yeah, but that was only for 10 minutes. No, but really it is going to become less and less easy to distinguish reality from virtual reality. We are talking about technology, robotics and digitalization, but when we ask about education, we talk about humanistic education. That's interesting. Esther, yeah, I think it is essential. In the end, education, social education, human education is going to be the engine of everything that we build, but there's no doubt that the technological knowledge and all the information that we can have and gather, and English and computing, as you said, I think that it goes beyond learning a subject, but it's learning a way of thinking, a way of structuring our mind and prepare ourselves for the future world. Education here in Spain may have lots of defects, and we always say that means that we are demanding, but I think that we are making a great effort to improve it, to incorporate technology in the best possible way. It is a huge infrastructure, so to speak, and it is difficult to change, but we have to keep working on that, and we have to try for new generations to learn to assimilate that change, that shift in the way of thinking that we are going to have to face in the future. I don't think that we will lose the concept of reality, the virtual world. I don't think it is going to change us. I'm quite skeptical about that, about how big this shift is going to be in the future. But we will have to be facing other labor realities for which we will have to be ready. I had to face a completely different labor reality than the one my parents faced, and I guess that the next generations will go through the same problems. I think that it is a huge challenge. I think that is the most important area, and that not enough is being done, and perhaps the solution should come from abroad or from other areas with more innovative approaches. we interviewed someone in my TV show, and they were saying, yeah, but you cannot ask a child what he wants to be in the future, but you will have to ask, what things would you like to do in the future? Perhaps because he will want to do several things at the same time, or sequentially, or at the same time. I perform different jobs right now in my life, and I think one of the changes, just to bring it down to earth, I'm going to give you an example. We talk a lot about the need to develop competences more than knowledge. Of course, technological and humanistic knowledge is important, but what we are certain about is that there is going to be a change, and change is going to be constant, permanent. And what is important is to have that attitude, that mindset, to adapt to change, to see how you can recycle or retrain yourself. I have a report here, and they are promoting things in Latin America regarding this, and you can see what programs are working and which ones are not. But just as I said, I'm very much involved in conveying science to schools and so on, and I visit schools very often. And in high school, in the ESO, they are very ready to do different activities, but in the ESO they say that they are preparing themselves for the baccalaureate, and so they cannot do any other activities. They have to study for exam. What is that? I can't believe it, really. It is just an exam. We should be learning things. I come here 1 or 2 hours, I provide an overview from the outside world, very stimulating vision about science, and they say no, they are preparing. You mean when you said from outside, from the outside, what do you mean? No, I mean from the outside. For example, Uber changed the world of taxi from outside with a new idea that revolutionized. I don't know. I'm not the one who knows about that. Jorge knows much more than me. But sometimes it is very difficult. It is just a question of thinking out of the box. Perhaps I've gone too far, but when everyone is talking about changing and nobody's changing, sometimes perhaps it is you need someone else to come and change it all together. I remember a sentence that I quote that I read that said, reforming a university is like reforming a cemetery. You cannot expect any help from those inside of it. Let's see. I am American. I'm not going to criticize the Spanish education system because it will be too daring of me. But what are we seeing right now in the world? What has value in economic terms in the world nowadays? Is it technology or is it ideas? I agree fully with what Carl has just presented. What we build, what we contribute to the world as human beings is social intelligence, manipulation, creativity, being able to make a difference between what is valuable for society and what is not. A robot is not going to be able to do that. The 50 companies with the highest capitalization right now in the world were born out of ideas, not out of technology. Technology is at the service of the idea. Uber, for example, that is an idea. They have reinvented taxi. No. They have reinvented the driver. No. They have reinvented a business model. That is creativity. That is an idea. I doubt very much whether a computer is going to be able to extrapolate or use those data, because we cannot give the computer that type of intelligence that he will need, although he may have deep learning or whatever artificial intelligence is fashionable lately. But now I come back to competences that are being demanded by the world today, and that is very much in line with how we should be preparing our younger generations, but also ourselves. First, what I said at the beginning, we are not reaching the demand of the market in technical competences. If I look at the most demanding skills is cloud computing, statistical analysis, web architecture, Q&A software, recruitment, talent recruitment, marketing, SEO and SEO software, system control software. Those are the most demanded skills, and I know because those are skills and competences that we deal with, and those are data that are included by someone in the profile in LinkedIn, for example. But the value that are the most important skills are the attitudinal skills. What does that mean? That's what we are trying to do, to use artificial intelligence in order to measure and to apply algorithms to the behavior of users. And I think that the disabled people have those competences and those skills: resilience, change management, effort, creativity. They know how to reinvent themselves at every point in time in their life because they have been doing it for all their life. And so those are the people that have a lot to teach us. And I think that's what we are seeing with the companies. They are demanding a way to measure those attitudinal skills, those which relate to attitude, change management, how to react, how to spot an opportunity, how to be creative, how to work remotely. In the gig economy, perhaps we will be working for a company where we won't see a human being. Perhaps we will work from home. I know it is not the most efficient one, but at least in order to be able to manage our autonomy. Yeah, you've opened up a new question that I want to add, the digital gap from a double perspective. On the one hand, you are breaking with the discourse that I had in mind. I'm happy about that, but can digital press exist and orient itself towards specific geographical areas or groups of people, Esther? Yeah, for sure. I have no doubt about that. The clearest example is the one that I was telling you about. The people with disabilities have to reinvent themselves, and they have to integrate themselves in a future that is not really conceived for everyone. If we talk about a touchpad, we create lots of applications, but we cannot think about how someone who is blind or who cannot move the hand can use that tablet, or the information perhaps that we need to understand, complex information that is becoming more and more complex. Not just for disabled people, also elderly people, and there's an obvious gap there, and that's the task of developers and the people that are working in this area to turn it around and turn that gap into an opportunity. Let's take advantage of all those technological advances to allow them to do something that they were not doing up to now. Yeah, but that's regarding the technological progress, but I'm talking globally. Perhaps globalization, it can be great, but the world is much bigger than Europe, United States, Canada and New Zealand. Yeah, we are always, our approach is always a single one, our single Western approach. But the World Economic Forum was stating or warning us that there can be also a gender gap, that the gender gap is increasing right now. And that quote from Ericsson saying that electricity is going to allow women to integrate themselves in the labor market because physical strength is not going to be so fundamental. But for example, manufacturing or administrative work, those were areas where women have been able to penetrate, and the World Economic Forum is warning about a possible step back in all that development. But that is happening in certain areas of the world, and I think that is a great challenge. That is inequality. The speed of absorption of technology by the higher layers of society or some developed areas is much faster than those poorer societies. And so although we improve those lower layers of society, the gap is going to keep increasing because we are making progress much faster than them. Yeah, what we are seeing in the market right now is that the developing economies are taking advantage of that a lot. We have seen it with the outsourcing to India. We have seen it, and so the education system is training the young people with skills that we need from them, and that's the first thing. But what is also interesting is how we can talk about the skill gap, but technology is also reducing the scope of those or the demand and the supply and demand between different tasks, not only between jobs. And I'm going to give you an example. I think it's a very good one. We know the company General Electric. It is a huge company with, 300,000 employees or something like that, lots of them, and they must have a lot of talent in their company. One of the areas of expertise is design and manufacturing of aircraft engines. We know that an aircraft can be much more efficient and could be saving a lot of fuel if it is lighter. So they had a problem in their business. They needed to reduce the weight of a connection, something that connects the wing to the plane. And so they thought, can there be an engineer in the world? And they created the gamification. That's very difficult to say in Spanish for an English speaker. But they launched a contest, and we will pay $20,000 for the person that can take out more weight from this part. And they put together that contest. 600 people answered. There were 10 shortlisted finalists, and none of them was an engineer. It was won by someone from Indonesia, lowering the weight by 80% without any formal training. And we are talking about the skill gap or competence gap. I don't think there is a gap. I think that the most needed competence is to be able to recognize opportunities, how to look for opportunities, not because I live on a social media, but everyone has to have a digital profile. We are seeing the world more. We are looking for jobs on the internet, on the digital world, and perhaps they may be obsolete here, and you could be working remotely for Africa, for example, where you may not be obsolete. So you have to commercialize your skills in that new world. Okay, let's close this chapter. Yeah, and to contribute something new, because it has been excellent what I've heard. I'm not an expert at that, but what experts say is that in the field of inequalities, there is a great risk of them increasing the inequalities. You mean geographical ones? No, all of them. And it will depend on what we do. Of course, the policies that we propose, they will be growing or not, but the trend is that they will continue growing. One of the aspects where we can have more disparities is the excluded ones, and that is a age range, not only age range but also knowledge range. And if this shift takes place as fast as it is forecasted, what will we be doing with those people that cannot be recycled? For example, I could be an excluded one. I don't have digital competences and skills. Perhaps I may have other skills, but 50-year-olds and all those people, and we have an interview with Klaus Schwab, and he says the effort that they should be making and the society to be able to reintegrate them in society could be perhaps counter-producing. So perhaps it would be like much better to have a subsidy, some kind of basic rent, and motivate them to perform some kinds of non-paid activities, non-remunerated activities, and that make them feel integrated. But the change is going to be so fast that there's going to be a group of people that won't have the capacity to recycle themselves. Okay, we started talking about the digital gap, and now we have three pillars, three legs: geographical considerations, certain groups of population, and the excluded ones. That's very interesting, and we could perhaps spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm going to ask a question. This is a brief survey for everyone. We have asked about education, and I wanted to ask about a couple of questions now. Who thinks that our education systems, from the young people to the older people, thinks that we are training our children and ourselves for that future world? Who thinks that we are training and educating people well? That's very impressive. Two people. I don't know if I've missed anyone. Three. That's spectacular. The rest thinks that we are not educating our children enough. I don't know if who thinks we are not training them properly. So I think we are doing a bad job. And then in your group, in your sector, in your population, in your group of people, who thinks that the leaders are well trained for that new digitalization, for that reindustrialization? Are we, those who lead teams, not just companies or institutions, are leaders well trained for that change? Who thinks that they are? That's even worse than education. There were three for education. Nobody. Leadership. Let's discuss about leadership. I was expecting, I wanted to see what Carl was going to do, and I was going to copy him, but I don't know about the business world. No, you lead a TV show, so you are a leader. I'm not well prepared. I'm doing a TV show in Televisión Española, and I know that there are things that I see that I'm not well prepared, for example, for multimedia, social media, and so on. And they ask me to lead that TV show because perhaps I have some skills that are a little bit outdated. But that's what Telefónica, Televisión Española does. I think that, of course, it depends on your training, on your job, of course, but I would like to go back to the beginnings. To an automated world leaves some room for other professions that have nothing to do with the digital world. Perhaps it could be useful for a greater recognition of professions that are not very much recognized right now: the educators, the caretakers, the entertainers, and so on. There are lots of professions that in a more automated world will play a much more important role. For example, a nurse, it is quite obvious for everyone that the role and the work of a nurse is much less automatable than the role of a doctor, because surgery can be done by a machine, but the work of the job of a nurse is impossible to replace, really. And so we could perhaps redefine the social status of both professions. So beyond the digital question, a digitalized world is a world where there are new options and more options. Yeah, in my specific case, I think that I'm working for a company that allows me to develop those skills that I need to tackle the future challenges, and they do that quite well. In my company, we take leadership courses every quarter, and so I can prevent it, really. I think that they are doing a good job there. But when I look at the different surveys, we know that the millennials, we are tired of talking about millennials, but millennials will become 75% of the labor force by 2025. And we do lots of surveys in LinkedIn and in many other companies similar to us, is about what they expect from their leaders. The first thing that they expect is transparency, communication skills, less space, less gap between the office tower and themselves. And we know that when we talk about innovation, that's what concerns me about Europe, because we are keeping those old-fashioned hierarchies between the people that have power and money and the people who are generating ideas and that have so much value in this new economy. So I see many companies in Spain that are trying to turn to create a horizontal structure and to create mentoring and to empower their leaders and to create that talent that was in the front line, dealing with customers and with the teams and the people that are leading the companies.
But also talking about what they expect in this world is the social connection that also Carl mentioned before. Companies right now, the workforce, what they're looking for is a purpose. Because why is this business in the world? How to create a vision for the company. Where are they heading to? How my work is adding value to that vision. And I think that we still have a skills gap in this sense. Instead, we'll be closing and wrapping it up now. Talking about education, I would also like to say that most of the things that I have learned come from formal education and also from other training events where I have participated that have taught me a lot about what I am, and this added to experience. But I think that there are many things to improve, and this is why we all think ill about education. In the working side, I also think there are many things to improve. My company is small and dynamic, and we have many options to develop skills, to train ourselves outside. We even have our own internal training department, although we are so small, and one day a week one of us gives training to the other members of the team. And I think there are many things that we can do beyond that, because leaders need to keep developing their own skills, and I think there are plenty of opportunities, and there's also a great amount of will. Are there any questions?
Igual se te oye, ¿eh?
I'm using the microphone because of the translators. I think it was very interesting. Thank you, everyone. Ángel, congratulations. Sara, Pere, Jorge, and Este. And Ángel, I wanted to tell you that I agree with what you said, but there's something that can be done, because the result of your question about us doing the right job as a society, not only as a country, is very disappointment. But what we can do is to input in the political agenda state agreement on the digital agenda and the digital education. Either we do this or Spain is going to start lagging behind. I think there's a great work to do. Obviously, Pere has a great TV program where he can stimulate and also call people about this need. And also, Ángel, I think I was where you are a few months ago or some time ago, and I want you to give my regards to your colleagues. But as journalists should keep in our minds that in order to grow and to develop as a society and as a country, we need to join in the technological revolution, or else we will be lagging behind. We need to input this in our programs, in the questions that we ask our politicians. We need to be from the media all the time talking about this, so society really grasps it, and that it is the very society that demands it. We have the tools that are very powerful. We have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, we have plenty of tools that we can use, and we can do something from our jobs. In a few minutes the minister will be here, so we could talk to her as well. Any other comment to do? I agree that this is a problem for us as a society. We look onto education when there are big flaws and deep flaws, and I think we do right. The quote that I said before, it comes from an Anglo-Saxon book. It wasn't somebody thinking about Spanish universities. I think this is a common problem in our societies, but obviously education is one of the pillars where we need to build our future on. I have two questions over there. I just wanted to add that I would find it very interesting to reach an digital education agreement and an emotional education agreement. I think I have 3 questions waiting. Please be concise. Hello, my name is Arantxa Ruiz. I am a headhunter and I'm an expert in personal branding. And I wanted to ask a question and add something, because we talk about new employability as a duty for new professionals, but I also want to ask what do we do about businesses? Because when we start talking about the work in the future in the present, but we have our companies here, and when we tell all our youngsters to be creative and teamwork, etc., and when they arrive at their first companies, they really have a shock, because the new employability needs to deal with the professionals as well as with the businesses, and I think that we should facilitate it or drive businesses to start digitalizing themselves. Also, together with Andrés Pérez Ortega, we are the only ones who claim that education can be improved, but that we could not blame it for everything. And I think that one of the important things is the prestige of a very important profession, which is the job of a teacher. By my work, I meet teachers every day who are really struggling in the world, and I think that we should give them some trust, because they are making a big effort, and we should all raise our hands for them, for all these teachers who are working every day so hard. This is a personal opinion. This is a very important topic. Teachers are the victims, and probably they are the protagonists, but the first victims of the system. And I think this is an issue that we need to take into account. Obama criticized teachers when he wanted to drive his new plan. We must recognize their merits, and I think that, broadly speaking, they have not recycled themselves as much as they should. There's a great margin for improvement in this aspect as well. If I were a politician, I wouldn't be saying out loud these things, but I meet them in my work, and I think that they have not changed their mindsets in the past 20 years. Recently, we presented a report on the demand and the offering of education in the Internet of Things, and one of the conclusions coming out from this report that comes from a great team of experts is that we need a degree about Internet of Things in the vocational training, and the answer of a director is that to input a new title, a new degree in the vocational training in the formal education in Spain would take about 8 years. Just a quick comment. I've been in Spain for 16 years, so I consider myself to be quite Spanish, but I have a criticism to say. And not only to the Spanish culture, also to the European culture in this world. When we talk about innovation, I'm a country manager for LinkedIn, but I'm also an angel for startups here in Spain, and I deal greatly with the innovation world. And the problem here is when we talk about investment and innovation, and I'm talking from the beginning, we do not value failure as a part of the innovation process. In my country, maybe we are a bit more advanced in this sense as a society and as a culture, but the lady mentioned emotional education, and I agreed. And I talked about aptitude skills. There are certain things that we need to allow from our children and the professionals in the world and entrepreneurs in the world, is that almost all entrepreneurs who have been very successful, we can talk about Alibaba, Airbnb, or Uber, they have gone through 3 or 4 failures before they reach success. So if we're talking about education, we need to look at ourselves and as a society here in Spain, how and wonder how we are going to change this attitude towards failure. Mercedes Chacon, I'm director from the Bankia Foundation. We work for dual education. Thank you, Jorge, for presenting vocational education, because we were talking about education in general, but we have not spoken about vocational training. This is the greatest gap in the Spanish educational system, and it hadn't been mentioned until he spoke about it. And when we talk about digitalization, this is the system that will sustain all those technicians, digital technicians, that will be the drivers for the change in the Spanish businesses. About 91% of the Spanish companies, those profiles, those degrees in the vocational training education will be necessary and will fill 2 out of 3 jobs in the future. I just wanted to say that if we want to have this education agreement, since we are so unsatisfied with it, either we take into account the vocational training or we will missing the target again. This that Sarah just said about failing, the losers, the failures in our educational system were always aimed at the vocational training, and this was never mentioned as part of the formal education. Mercedes is completely right, and I know about this as a father, and I wanted to ask, what's our share of guilt as parents? Who thinks that in Spain as parents are guilty of this aspect? Well, that's funny, because we talk about politicians, we talk about systems, but what about ourselves who might be pushing these attitudes? My name is Araceli Cabezon. I'm a partner in the consulting firm, in a consulting firm. When we talk about education, that seems to be the main topic in many presentations. People from our generation, we learned 2 topics that were the most important ones. Those were mathematics and grammar, or mathematics and Latin. And in this mess that we make, this mix of knowledge and soft skills, there's something that I thought about when I was talking with a colleague who loves technology, and she said, why do they need mathematics or Latin at school? Why do children need it for? And I wondered, why did I study those things when I never used them in my career? Well, the answer is that those 2 subjects were not only a piece of knowledge, but also a source of skills: logical thought, analysis capacity, synthesis, global view, skill to focus on certain aspects. So thanks to those 2 types of knowledge, those subjects that were so well structured in the Spanish education, thanks to those, I have acquired certain skills that have enabled me to work in a world up to the 2000. Now, do we need to change completely the educational system, or maybe we should refocus the way we teach certain topics? Maybe the concept that we are starting to consider obsolete is the concept of subjects. Maybe we need to just look at them differently so we can develop the soft skills. Adding something to what she has said. I think that mathematics and philosophy and solidarity are things that children need to learn. The problem is, how do we teach mathematics? How do we teach philosophy? And how do we develop through the vocational training or by other means this type of learning? Just before we started the debate, we were saying that we're focusing and learning how to program, and I think that's important in the sense that we need to teach them how to have a consistent way of thinking, and the same with maths. We need to teach them in a way that is meaningful to students and in a different way from the way we learned mathematics when we were students. And I think all these subjects are very important. One of my teachers, who was my tutor for my thesis, my PhD, used to say that people, when they were asked why they need to learn all these algebra concepts that are so complicated at the beginning of our degree, he used to answer, when people asked him that, he answered that we used to go to the gym not to win a gold medal in the Olympics, but just to train our skills and to build muscle to be ready to face other challenges. There could be other direct ways of learning. Obviously, mathematics are important, but I think that we need to add other direct means to promote these skills. Well, knowledge does take room. We have the opportunity of raising our children and educating them for a part of their lives, but we really need to verify if what we are teaching them and the way we're doing it is the most successful choice. When I don't remember having learned the list of the gods, kings in Spain, but I learned the rivers in Spain, and I learned them by heart. I think I could even list them out loud now. Well, the problem with the gods, kings, and up to Don Pelayo, I think that those things allow you to understand what's going on in the world. And with the rivers, where this has been degenerating, and so children do not even know where the Amazon River is, and they do know where the rivers in Madrid are, and as we all know, they are basically just a stream. For instance, my kid, I see that she is asked about very superficial things and not about important things such as the climate change. Well, I think that the public education is better than the one I endured, but we can still improve it. We're talking about education, but there are a couple of levers that are also key, and I would like to mention them now. One of them is the need that we have of redistributing the wealth. We have talked about the basic income. I don't know if this is viable, or maybe in 200 years, but we also need to redistribute the working hours to shorten the working days, the working hours. And what's very clear is that the workload will not be for one single entity, but for a pool of people, and this will change the working relationships. The nature of trade unions, etc., will change. There are different aspects that are related to politics, and also those policies that are that attempt to avoid the gap between the wealthy and not so wealthy is also very important. Well, that would be maybe the topic for another conference. I would like to answer some questions that have been raised here. We know that youngsters that are starting their career right now will change in average 11 times. They could be changing their work within the same company, but I would say that they will change several times from a company to another, or maybe they will become freelancers, etc. Carl said it very well. It's very difficult to forecast what's going to happen even in 5 years, but we are thinking that the recycling of skills or reskilling will be necessary throughout people's working life. And this is a very complex challenge. Many companies are already implementing training programs, but they find people who are rejecting this training. They do not want to recycle their skills. So we are criticizing the way we are training and teaching our children, but we also need to think about these vocational training programs. Most of the people who come out of companies many times do so because they have a bad boss, but the second reason for them leaving the companies is because they lack professional development. So this has not only to do with the education that you're being given, but also the development opportunities in your company. I think we have a couple more questions, although we're very tight in time. Well, good morning. I would like to thank Ángel Expósito for this present that he has given us with the open brainstorming that we're listening to that has raised so many questions. My name is Francisco Menchen. I'm a creativity explorer and I have been working for 30 years in this topic. In education needs a big bang. It's true. I've been an education inspector, so I know what I'm talking about. And it's true that teachers are victims. We have excellent teachers, but they're looking at the past. So nowadays, we need to prepare a new type of human beings. We need to create a new human being, not because it's just a matter of fashion, but because sciences have taught us the great amount of discoveries that have been made within our brains. We have Este, for instance, one of the people who are carrying out the best brain program in the world. He has taught us how much the view on the world has changed from Newton to quantum physics. We need to take this into account. We are aware that the human beings are made of energy, and we need to educate them, not as the card said. I will try to be brief. What are the main principles that should drive this new educational system? Is the NOE plan, the new educational order. That's to say that teachers need to understand that children are creative by nature, and this needs to be, the children need to be aware of this, and they need to convey this to their teachers. In second place, we need to understand that reality changes, that each of us has their own idea of the world, and out of the 200 people we have here, we all have a different outview. And third place, that evolution, the human being is here to evolve, that we cannot expect a child. We need to understand that a child is handling digital media and supports more easily than his or her parents, because they're more prepared for that. I don't know if you know who Este is. He is a wonderful character. He is a Basque man living in the United States. He was the one who started a scientific program under the Obama mandate. Very briefly, I'm Ignacio Martínez Pedrero from the Polytechnical University in Madrid. I am going to be a teacher of business economy, although my school is from an engineering field. I just wanted to say that many good ideas come from outside, And I agree that training and the educational system and the contents, I agree with everything that has been said, but I think that the problem is the way we are assessing these students, because the students get a lot of knowledge, but when we talk about the exam itself, we're limiting them in their capacities. So do you have, or have you heard of any proposal for assessing students at the university level, if possible? Well, university assessment dash talent management dash company assessment, or assessment within the companies, the way you can assess how you evolve or not and if you have learned or not, rather than a specific proposal, although we have several in my foundation. I think that what we're looking for when we assess people in life in general, and the way that we're doing it now, I would like to bring about the Turing test that allows us to understand, to make a difference between a machine and a person. If after several questions, according to Turing, if you were not able to make the difference between a person and a machine, the thing is, we could make an artificial intelligence pass the PISA test and see if they can pass it. If they can do it, we are really doing something very silly keeping this type of assessment. There's an experiment of artificial intelligence in Japan that was about preparing a deep learning system so that it would pass the most prestigious university in Japan. They said that they would achieve this before 2016. So if you needed 100 points to enter the university, the machine has already achieved 92 points. So we're not so far from there. We have just 10 seconds. 10 seconds for each of you as a conclusion.
Perdido. 10 segundos.
I'm almost lost all my seconds. As a conclusion, I would like to talk about other things, but that would be too long. I think we have talked a lot about new jobs, and Jorge said something that I wanted to talk about, and there are jobs that exist nowadays that will grow enormously in the future. So when you talk about the types of jobs that will exist in the future regarding the health field, for instance, those will really grow. We have talked about a future with a new type of employability where other skills will be demanded, and education will be the driver for all this, and technology will be the tool that we will be using for it. My conclusion from everything we have heard today is that all of us who are of a certain age, we are aware that the political system, societies and culture are very slow in changing, and I think that we need to internalize and accept that the world is changing and take full responsibility for ourselves, and being ourselves the drivers for this change. If we expect the political system to change or the educational system to change, that the big companies change and they catch up with the pace that technology is changing, we are really lost. There's nothing to do. We need to be all responsible and acknowledgeable for the way we face those changes in the world. This is a great way to leave the floor to the Minister of Labor. Jorge, Esther, Pere, Sara, this has been very interesting. I'm sure that we all want to listen to you further, but thank you all for your presence here today.
Ahora creo que hay un vídeo.
I think they will play a video now. This is a acknowledgement video.
José María Sanz
Magallón is the General Manager of Fundación Telefónica. José María, you have the floor. Thank you very much and good morning. Dear Minister, first of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of the President of Fundación Telefónica, César Alierta, who intended to be here today. He was here last year, but unfortunately for a health issue, slightly complex and painful, but not too serious, he couldn't make it and he had to stay at home, and I apologize on his behalf. I would like to continue by welcoming the Minister of Work and Social Work and Employment and Social Work, and I would like to thank her for promoting employability among the Spaniards. I would like to thank the Fundación 11, Vocento and Manpower for showing that companies can and must turn words into facts and renew their commitment with society. I would also like to thank all of you for accompanying us here in this first encounter of the 5 that have been prepared for discussing employability and the future of human beings. When we look into the future, I think that we at Telefónica Foundation are very optimistic in global terms, because never before had humanity and humankind been in a better position than right now. Technological progress has been an ally for the well-being of people, and in a few decades we have made more progress than in all the millennia that we have been on this planet. Does that mean that we have to keep passive in the face of the challenges and the changes that come with technologies? No, the other way around. Our optimism is a proactive one, because we trust progress and technological progress. We have to work towards them, to attain them. Digital revolution is transforming labor, is creating new professions and putting an end to some others. That has happened throughout history, and that was said by Carl in his presentation. It is true that the future is becoming more and more unpredictable. The speed of disruptive changes is getting rid of many of the certainties that we had so far. There are lots of things that we do not know about, but there are also things that are very important and that we know. We know that training is going to be very important in this future, that the key to progress will be to train youngsters in technological abilities, in mathematics, engineering, the STEM. We should demand more professionals that are trained in STEM. There is a deficit of 20 million professionals of STEM professionals in Europe, 2 million in Spain, and that has also been said in the colloquium. It is not just a question of knowledge, that is part of the equation, but we should also integrate and embed a new attitude in a world that changes all the time. Linear careers and linear degrees are not useful any longer. Last Sunday in the regional papers of Vocento, José Dareiz was talking about that, the estempatia. He was coining the term estempathy. That was key to not to lose the benefits of technological transformation, to orient towards the future professions, but keeping a good relationship, to be respectful and to highlight creativity and teamwork. That is a good contribution to estempathy. We know that 7 out of 10 students will be working in professions that do not exist right now. Once in the labor market, they will have to face many challenges, not just from one position to another, but from company to another, but in general terms. Prepare our youngsters for this scenario is a task for all of us, for the whole education system and for the whole society. All those attending share this conviction. In Telefónica Foundation, we believe in that, and we have been working on this for several years through different initiatives that are related to education and employability throughout the world. One of them The most recent one is Pro Futuro, an digital education project together with La Caixa for children from 6 to 12 years. But we shouldn't stop there. That's why we are also working with youngsters that are facing their future professional career, and that is done through an entrepreneurship program, Conecta Digital, that will have trained by the end of this decade more than 20 million youngsters throughout Spain and Latin America. Improving employability is contributing to the economic growth of society, the competitiveness of the companies, and reinforcing people so that they can develop properly in the times of digital revolution. Help them to develop their abilities so that they can be useful for the fellow people, and that's what we are committed to here in Telefónica Foundation. We will keep working on that because that's the most, the highest objective that we can achieve. Thank you. The Vice President, Executive Vice President of ONCE Foundation is going to take the floor. Alberto Durán. Thank you, dear Minister of Employment and Social Equality, dear organizers and hosts, and on behalf of ONCE Foundation, I would like to thank you for that and encourage this challenge that we are embracing right now. You have been talking about the future challenges of employability, about how that is going to change the world of labor and employment. That is a challenge, of course, but it is more so for those vulnerable groups of population. There are many, and I know the one that deals with disability. The challenges, as such, require a special effort, and that's an effort that we develop by working together. In ONCE Foundation, we have created Inserta Forum a few years ago, which is a venue for encounter, for networking among 95 organizations, the European Social Fund, the Ministry of Employment, the business schools, companies that want to make progress in the employability of people with disabilities, and also other topics related to disabilities, like, for example, accessibility, that can also be a necessary element to be able to face the future product and service market with a greater degree of solvency. We set an objective for ourselves of 17,000 jobs with the support of those 95 organizations by the end of 2017, and we are going to exceed it. We will exceed it thanks to many different stories of people that have been able to change their life thanks to our support. We have given them an opportunity. There are many cases, and I was reminded this morning about a few ones, and I stuck to the story of Antonio. Antonio has a disability, and that disability emerged. He had serious health problems, like an allergy. He was a pastry cook, and he also lost his wife, and after a lengthy and difficult process of recovery, he decided to give himself the opportunity. With an acquired disabilities, his life changes altogether. For him, many things change in his life. Of course, it depends on the disability, and he decided to go forward and to come with us, to join us and look for a job. He, of course, had to change his profession. He joined our new technologies permanent training school, and he now works for Accenture. He could work for another one, but he is one of the 17,500 people that will find a job thanks to this Inserta forum and for our networking. We were lucky enough to have the Minister of Employment together with us in that forum, and she said that it was a lever for employability of people with disabilities. Dear Minister, that is a lever where there are many arms pushing forward, and that is how it should be. Difficult challenges and difficult journeys require the participation of others. We are concerned with the future of employment, and we are concerned with that transformation that is going to take place in future employments, future jobs. In the consulting committee, we have also Telefónica. Telefónica coordinates a group that has to project digital talent into the future, to define how it should look like, and that's the line that we are working along. We are always working together, because only together will we be able to design the necessary tools to provide an opportunity for those people who are going to take advantage of it. It is not going to be easy, it never was, but it is necessary to make it possible that a job for any person can change their life. For a disabled person, it can change their life radically. It changes the life of that person, of the close environment, and it changes society at the same time, because if we see that that person is able to work, we all become aware, and we go through a mental transformation, and we realize that people with disabilities have a room in our society. If they don't work, this is a question of law, but it is also a luxury that we cannot afford. In this Europe that is looking towards a future with a sustainable project. And so thank you very much. You are all participating in the challenge of all challenges. Our recipe is very simple today, yesterday, and always. Challenges as many as you wish, but always all together. Thank you.
Don Raúl Grijalva.
Mr. Raúl Grijalva, Chairman of Manpower Group, Human Age Institute. You have the floor. Good morning, dear Minister, Secretary of State. Also thank you to Telefónica for welcoming us in this first forum of the 5 that we're going to organize in 2017-2018. We come from a challenge about education that was one of the great contributions of this year, 2017. And as you can see, we are heading towards a new challenge where we are talking about employability, the future of work and of employment, and about new skills from our perspective. Every year we interview 16 million people all over the world, and we receive around 4 million requests for specific profiles from our 500,000 customers. We presented in the World Economic Forum at Davos in January, I think it was, the greatest study about future competences and skills that is there's going to be in the future. We said that 15% of the jobs will disappear, that 90% of the jobs that we have right now will have an impact of around 30 to 40% in the present skills, thanks or due to digitalization, to the combination of different technologies that will turn those skills into completely different ones, that this digitalization will wipe out 40% of those companies that are not able to set those learning environments as sustainable organization, and also to attract and retain talent. We also see a lack of adjustment of our talent. We see that 48% there is a disadjustment of talent in the world. That means that from every 2 positions that a company is launching in the market, 1 is left uncovered and occupied. There is a 30% in Spain of the offers, job offers and profiles of companies are having no possibility to find someone to occupy that vacancy, and at the same time we have a high unemployment rate. And one last trend, and one third trend, that is what we call the next generation employment or jobs, where 60%, around 60% by 2030 of the people that are working will belong to the centennial or millennial generations. We have just presented a study done about 25,000 of those millennials in the world. Their main priority is to keep learning, to develop professionally, to look for work environments that are flexible with some balance between work and private life. And we have a challenge ahead of us in this future of work to answer those three questions. In a study that we will be presenting in the next couple of weeks, we did a projection of the Spanish market, and I would like to anticipate some of the data that are going to be published. From the 2.6 million jobs that are going to be created with different growth hypotheses of GDP and of growth in itself, in the next 10 years, that will create 2.6 million jobs. 80% of those will be technical, qualified, high competency ones, or high skilled ones, and that's why we think that we have to develop this challenge that gives us solutions to be able to deal in this country with the need to find full employment. And I know that they work on that all the time at the ministry, but that challenge has to be part of the solutions that we all structure from among all of us. From the Human Age Institute, we have had a skill impact on 8,000 youngsters, thanks to the main multinationals all over the country, and also many other institutions. They have helped us to improve employability, and for us the magic word for the next year will be, for the next years, will be learnability. That is that encompasses the best way to guarantee employability of people. That is the capacity to keep learning those skills that will continue changing. Technology will change them, and that's why from the society of knowledge we believe strongly that we will go on to the society of learning, and each and every one of us will have to design his or her own employability pathway, and at the same time thousands of companies will have to design learning and what learning environments they want to have in order to be sustainable, to attract the best people and to retain the best people and to continue training them. And that's why we join this challenge with passion and enthusiasm, and trying to become part of the solutions that this country needs. Thank you.
Estas jornadas son...
So these days are an initiative of XL, that is a company that belongs to the Vocento Group. Its president is Santiago Bernabé.
Ministra.
Dear Minister, Secretary of State, co-organizers together with us, the Telefónica Foundation, Manpower Group, ONCE Foundation. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to take part in the closing ceremony of this encounter. It is a cycle that we have named XLDesafío, XL Challenge, and that there is really an anecdote that it coincides with the 30th anniversary of one of our most cherished publications with very widespread circulation, which is XL Semanal, that is distributed on the weekends with the papers of the 13 papers of the Vocento Group, apart from all the fellow newspapers, and so it has a wide distribution and wide circulation all over Spain. For us, the world of information, for publishers, those who disseminate knowledge and opinion and information, for us, the topic that you have discussed here is a source of concern. We are worried because it is the future of our children, the future of our country, and the future of all of us, really. It is a cycle where we would like to reflect and also provide an answer to one of the most critical topics that the companies and the professionals are facing right now in this ever-changing scenario. The challenge of employability, the new skills that are demanded by the market, the development of talent, and the professional integration in a world with jobs that we do not really know right now. It is really difficult to face the speed of change of our technology while our competences and our skills and our companies seem to make progress at a much lower pace. It is also difficult to understand that in a few years 45% of our professionals will be workers of knowledge and innovation, and they will be changing projects, companies and objectives all the time. Because we have to assume that in 5 and 10 years this leap forward of artificial intelligence will lead machines to perform functions that were unheard of and unthinkable right now, and that will change altogether our labor scenario. And that is a challenge, that is a concern, and we have to start facing it. We are more social, more multitask, we are more informed, and we spend more time connected. And we know that in order to face the challenges, keeping still is not an option. We are all fighting for the same talent in a market without barriers. In this context of versatility, virtuality, and globality that is imposed on us by new technologies, we also need references and benchmarks and values that anchor us to credibility, professionalism, experience, and deontology. Proposals that are fed by faithful information, contrasted information, so that we can identify what is relevant, check the truth, and to provide a balanced message. And that is being developed by several editorial groups, like for example Vocento, and publications as XLDesafío, who are paying attention to the high ranking topics and the main challenges that are a concern for society as a whole. This morning we have had the opportunity to get to know experiences and opinions and insights about the future of society in order to get ready for that change. We have professionals and companies and institutions together with us, like for example Fundación Telefónica, Human Age Institute, Manpower Group, the ONCE Foundation, and our collaborator Air Europa, who are leading the challenge of tackling the challenges of the professionals in order to be able to fit into new projects and new jobs. For all those, and for the Minister of Employment, I would like to say thank you very much for your support in these new proposals, with which we want to contribute to understanding the challenges and find solutions and try to discuss and to share the problem. Thank you very much.
Hay ministerios, no sé, por ejemplo.
There are ministries, for example, the Ministry of Development will always be the Ministry of Public Works. And I said that it was a Ministry of Work, or Ministry of, it is a Ministry of Employment and Social Security. Fatima Báñez, you have the floor. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ángel. It doesn't matter, work, labor, employment, the name has changed in this term in office, but perhaps that is a foreshadowing of the great country that we are, and this is the Spain of employment and of recovery, thanks to the huge commitment that all Spaniards renew every day. I wanted to come here this morning to thank you for the invitation. at the presentation of this huge challenge that you are presenting to us, XLDesafío. I would like to thank all those who had the idea, who came up with the idea of putting it together. Thank you to Vocento, to Manpower Group, Telefónica Foundation and ONCE Foundation, but more above all to the 23 experts that are going to participate in each of those 5 days, and to the more than 1,000 participants that will contribute with their ideas and their contributions to the opportunities, to this topic, the opportunities in the form of new employment possibilities. And I take advantage of this opportunity to thank the Spanish society. The Spanish society as a whole, to the workers, the companies, the SMEs, the freelancers, the families, and the social institutions such as these foundations that in their day-to-day make our country live a more integrating recovery and more inclusive recovery. They are the protagonists of change, and I would like to thank in particular those who have started this challenge, XLDesafío, that from the civil society that reaches where the public administrations and governments sometimes do not reach, wants to provide response from that social responsibility to the contribution of the future and the present of Spain. I think it is a great initiative. It is a initiative that has to be written in capital letters, because the opportunities of people are always start with a job. And the second thing that I wanted to say is that we should trust, we should have confidence in a country that has been able to change things, in a Spain that is now creating jobs at an intense pace, turning that economic growth into a very social one, because it could transform that social growth, so that economic growth in employment, and because Spain is now leading the creation of jobs both in the euro area, and it is also doing that 25% more than Germany, that is a second country, and by 50% faster than France. And that is the commitment of the Spanish society. And that, which is trust and confidence in the task that we are developing, leads us to reflect on what is left for us to do. We have 19 million workers in Spain. The great objective for this country is to reach at least 20 million people working. That would mean that the recovery reaches everyone that wants to have a job, that deserves a job, and that right now has not found that opportunity. So the first horizon for the next few years is to have that whole pool of talent that has not been able to obtain the opportunities that they deserved through a job. And I ask you for your trust in being confident that we are going to achieve it, and we are also looking for allies in civil society. Two very important pieces of information. From the 3.5 million unemployed that we have in Spain, half of them haven't completed secondary mandatory education, and 60% of those below 30 years of age haven't either. So skills and competences and are key for these people to be employable as soon as possible. That is the reality of what is a country that has to count on all its human capital and all its talent. And secondly, the new challenges that we have ahead of us as a society. As I've been told, you have discussed that at length, and those speaking before me have also highlighted those same topics. The challenges that we have as a society all over the world, both globalization, revolution 4.0, digitalization, are changing the productive processes, are changing the company and the business management, and they are also changing the needs and the profiles of the new jobs. Some of them, some people see that as a threat. And I invite all of you to see it and to look at it as an opportunity. Because it is true that there will be repetitive tasks that will disappear. They will be performed by machines, but the new professional profiles that are being demanded require new skills, new competences, and require creativity. And those are the new qualities that we should be encouraging and promoting in that human capital that is being born. I'm just going to give you a piece of data. In the last report of the European Commission about the digital agenda for Europe, they said that for every 2 jobs that are lost in the next few years in the real economy, there will be 5 emerging in the digital economy. And that's why we believe that the future of Spain and the future of Europe are going to be there. There will be professions that disappear, but there are others that are being born: technical engineering, cyber security, big data professionals, new professions, and all the ones that will be appearing. Almost, as you said, 70% of the children that are now in primary schools will work in jobs that we do not know right now. So the challenge is huge, all-encompassing, but I ask you to look at it as a great opportunity for the present and the future of our country. And in the face of that huge challenge, what tools are we going to have available? First, training, and training, because that is key for employability. And the second one, connectivity would be, perhaps. Connectivity, the desire of this government is that when we talk about Spain, we do not make a difference between urban and rural Spain, but that we talk about a better connected Spain to receive public services, to be entrepreneurs, to improve employability through that training with the new mechanisms that are provided by, for example, internet and digital platforms. That is going to change everything. A Spain that is better connected and that is better trained, but which is permanently trained. The paradigm is not what we used to do, to train someone for a job, for a specific job, and that's it. The new paradigm is to train someone to be employable, permanently employable. That will be the safety and security of their present and future job, and that's where everything is at stake. We have to use all our talent, and we should have the best strategic asset that a country may have: the human capital, the people. And I can not state it clearly enough. The Spain of the present and the future is going to compete in talent and innovation. It's not going to compete in low salaries or anything. The agenda for competitiveness in Spain is the agenda of talent, and I ask for synergies, for complicity and support by the whole of the society. We are trying to improve things modestly at the Ministry of Employment. The Secretary of State of Employment and the whole team are working on that, because training is the great instrument that we have. Training from school. We have to start training and educating children, because employment starts in the classrooms. Dual professional vocational training to adapt to the productive fabric of the country, and quality employment that we are putting together, that adapts to the new model of training, and that we can perhaps help us to match supply and demand in terms of employment. And also training in digital skills. We are working, and before the end of this year we are going to launch a specific call for 60 million euros in digital skills, because the key of digital education is the key of present employment and of future employment. And as I was saying before, the challenges are varied, but they are an opportunity. And in life, the future is always belongs to the most daring ones, to the courageous one and the bold ones. And Spain is a country of bold people. And I would like to conclude my presentation by quoting a proverb from Africa. If you want to get there fast, go on your own, and if you want to get far, walk with others. So dear friends, the last word is hope. In my presentation, we are a great country, we are transforming this country together, and those challenges will receive an answer with courage, with innovation, with training, and with the best strategic asset that Spain has, which is its people, talent. And there we need all of you. Thank you very much.
Terminamos.
Just to wrap it up, I wanted to thank everyone here today and those who have been following us through the streaming and the website. And Laura was telling me that we have been trending topic for quite a while. We want to call you to invite you to the next appointment on the 12th of December in Malaga. Businesses and their commitment with talent. And finally, as the classical writers would say, what a wonderful experience to have a Spanish wine and to share a cocktail with everyone here.